Four.
But she's in
And
Austin
then
right
I'm
now.
gonna put the participants back up for a second.
We got 6 of them.
And then I'm going to mute
Oh.
all.
So this put me down
Yes.
about 3 weeks.
And I know I'm saying this out loud because Julie Clumpian said she's joining late, so I've got to make sure I see her when she joins. I'm muting the room. Good morning.
Not D, you know.
I am.
The only thing worse is when Carol's back here with her.
They have one.
Okay, here we go. Okay, we're gonna get started.
We are.
Okay, good morning, everybody. For those of you, a couple announcements first. This is week 3 of getting ready for Easter, and then we're not gonna meet next Sunday because it's Easter, but Scott and I are gonna go to sunrise services. So if anybody is in town on Sunday morning and want to go to sunrise service and want to have coffee and food or something here afterwards, we would love to do that. And it's at the beach. If you haven't done it, it's lovely as long as it's not raining.
And we'll coordinate that, but I'm going to go a step beyond. You don't even know this yet. But if any of you don't have plans for Easter, some people are at loose ends, come be with us down here at the house. We can talk about it afterwards or this week, but we'd actually like to have you with us. So let's, we can figure that out.
And there's somebody that needs to be the other thing is this group in Rockport, we've chosen the first and the second. Today, I couldn't go today just because I've got book club at 3 and they're only doing it at 3:30 and 7:30 in Portland. So for those of you who are here that want to, it's playing today in Portland at 3:30. And then I think Scott and I will go on Wednesday at 3:30. Yes, I'm going to play hooky from work a little bit and see it at 3:30 in Portland. And if you haven't seen, and I was just talking to V about this, if you haven't seen 1 and 2, it's not like we don't know the story, you guys. So you can go to 3 and it's good because 1 and 2 aren't playing in the movies right now. Yes. I might be wrong. Yeah. When I looked at Portland's schedule, yeah. Because you're catching left 1 and 2 and
Oh my.
But I don't know. Don't quote me on that. We have watch.
So you
could go see it for like 8 hours. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, so some movie theaters might have that where you could binge watch the whole season. But it is I don't know, it's been a very good thing right before Easter to do. And do you have fun on that?
No, it was just unfortunate. Aransas Pass didn't have it, then they did, now they don't again. And Portland at 3 o'clock, you'd be getting home at 7:30. So it just didn't work well. We're sorry we couldn't work this one out.
Okay. Prayers. First of all, we got a great prayer of Thanksgiving. Laura's with us today, and we've been praying for her she had gotten a couple of weeks ago Bell's palsy, and her face looks so much better. It's so wonderful. So it is healing. It's not completely there yet. So continue prayers for Laura. I've left Phil and Sheree off the prayers lately, and I should not have. Phil and Sheree are previous neighbors on Fulton Beach Road. Many of us here know them. Phil has Parkinson's, and Sheree is the primary caregiver, and that's difficult. Gina's not here today. Please, please, please continue to keep Gina in your prayers. We were praying for her as she was putting her husband in assisted living. Her mother is now very ill, and they were going to put her in the hospice as of yesterday. I saw her yesterday morning. She has been with her at a skilled nursing place and stayed awake all night for 4 nights. So she's very, very tired, and it's very, very emotional. So please keep Gina, her siblings, and her father in your prayer, and mother. Keep Kelly in your prayer. She is not here today. She hasn't been here for a couple of weeks. She is having a very hard time with pain. She is back in her house, back with electricity, but is not doing well, I think, in spirit as well as in physical. So please keep Kelly in your prayer, our friend in Canada. Robin's online. As we hit the holidays, keep people who are dealing with family members in your prayers. Robin and her brother-in-law, Jim, and sister, Tracy, I think. Kay, her brother, Richard, Elise, Amanda's partner's mom, did not have brain surgery this week because she had a clotting issue, but she is having brain surgery this Thursday. So please keep her in our. Continue to keep our daughter Julie in your prayers. She is not
She's
doing
not
well. Yeah.
I'd like to add one.
Somebody.
I'd like to add one. Could we add my great niece?
Oh yes, your great niece. I'm sorry. I did.
That's all right. No, she tried to commit suicide. She's 13. So she's getting mental help.
Who's great niece is that?
Kay.
This is Kay.
Okay.
It's Lisa's granddaughter.
Thank you.
We will keep her in your prayers.
Anyone who has children that age right now, it's never been easy, but it's got to be just really hard right now. So thank you, Kay. And Mary didn't tell you the full thing. I'm going to speak more with Kelly because of the snow, because of her situation. She was out of her house. Electricity was out. People actually died from the cold. And her pain situation is dire. She has lost a tremendous amount of weight. Please remember Kelly. God, you know, we always start by bringing these ones to you. We're told to be persistent in our prayers. And so we are. And we come with expectations. We come with belief. We come with understanding that above all, being together with you, having your peace is more important than anything. But you know, we see those that are healed. We see those, and we come bold enough to ask that. There are others, you know, that come that have difficulties, sometimes family, that don't always want to share, but you know our hearts. And we're grateful for your presence. We left Cheryl out this morning. Remember Cheryl with her health issues in particular. She's been so faithful and she has been such a good friend to so many of us. Be with us. We need that peace as well. We need your presence, and we need the heart that looks for a way closer to you. It's hard for me to pray for the world and for the country because it's so big, but we need that. We have leaders who've lost their way. People are angry at each other. Instead of saying to heal the world, we know that a time comes for that. Be with us. Remind us that we all have our own part to play in it. That these people, when we encounter them that are angry, we have the ability to speak to that. You send people to us, to our lives. Be with us as a reminder that we're your hands and feet, and always be with us as we study, that we find your will and your ways. Amen.
Okay, like I said, we're in week 3 of getting ready for Easter, and the week after Easter, we will do one more week of Easter, and what Jesus reminded us to do going forward. Couple of reminders. We said that what was Jesus doing this last week of his life, he was continuing to prepare his disciples or apostles because they were going to be the ones that were going to spread this gospel. 1, 2, he intentionally, there's no question about it, angered the religious leaders, so they had no choice but to put Jesus to death. And we're going to add a third little sideline today to remind ourselves that the Roman leaders cared about 2 things: peace and taxes. You want to say anything there?
Yeah, the Roman Empire, and this has come up so many times in the last few weeks to me personally. So I want to pass this on. Jesus did not deal with the Roman Empire. He just didn't. They were insignificant, and that's probably a good reminder to us as we get tangled up in political things. We have to live with it, but he didn't tell people rise up against the Romans. That's what the Jews wanted, but he didn't. And Rome's interest in all of this, Rome wants money always. The whole world is a colony, there's a word for it, but colony. They conquer to bring in income, to be rich, and they care about peace. There's a term called Pax Romana, or Pax Romana, if you're from the United States, that means the peace of Rome. Rome didn't care anything really about peace as such, but when there's uprisings, when there's not peace, they have to spend money. They have to go in and reconquer places they've already conquered. Think of Rome like the mafia, you know? It really is. The mafia was based on the Roman regimes. And they have places that are good earners, and they don't like anything that upsets their earning. So Pilate in all of this represents Rome, and Rome cares about 2 things: money and keeping things under control. And that's going to be a big factor today as we look at the things we're going to look at.
So remember, Jesus has done the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. We talked last week about him turning over the tables in the temple courtyard. But during this time, if you look at your Bibles, you'll be amazed how much teaching he did this final week of his life. So many of the parables, when we're in a church setting and they read one of the parables, we don't know when he said it, but a lot of these teachings he did the last week of his life. Does that mean he didn't do them the other 3.5 years? No, but they're recorded that he told them again. And we're going to look at 2 of those today. And I'm going to start off in Matthew chapter 21, verses 33. And it's called the parable of the wicked tenants. And this parable is also recorded in Mark and Luke. Listen to another parable. There was a landowner who planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it, dug a wine press in it, and built a tower. Then he rented it out to some tenants and then went away on a journey. When the harvest time drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to collect his share of the fruit. But the tenants seized his servants. They beat one, killed another, and stoned a third. Again, he sent other servants, more than the first fruit, but the tenants did the same to them. Finally, he sent his son to them. They will respect my son, he said. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to one another, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and take his inheritance. So they seized him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. Therefore, when the owner of the vineyard returns, what will he do with those tenants? He will put those wretches to a wretched inn, they replied, and will rent out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him his share of the fruit at harvest time. Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures, the stone the builder rejected has become the cornerstone. This is from the Lord, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you that the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people who will produce its fruit.
Keep going.
No, you told me to stop at 43.
Oh. Okay, then stop. I'm gonna skip ahead because it says that the Pharisees said that the Jewish leaders knew he was talking about them.
Okay, you want me to skip 44 and then go to 45?
Yeah.
Sorry. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard the parable, they knew that Jesus was speaking about them. Although they wanted to arrest him, they were afraid of the crowds because the people regarded him as a prophet.
So this is a confrontation, and he tells this parable, and you notice at the end what's important. There's Julie. Wait, no, Julie.
Yeah, do something.
At the end, it says that the Jewish leaders know that this parable is about them. And that's important to understand because the parable is about them. The parable is about a landowner, the person, the Lord, who has these tenant farmers, which was a common arrangement. And they farm the land and then they give the owner a share before they get their share. And these tenants don't want to give up their share. They don't want to give their due. And he sends servants to go collect. Well, if this is about the Jewish leaders, notice he's referring to them as tenants. The temple is not theirs, it's God's. And he's put them in charge, but they're supposed to give their due to him, and they don't want to. And he sends prophets to them, and they kill the prophets. You see the parallel, you see what this is about. And then he sends more prophets. And this actually sort of parallels some waves of prophets, but they kill him. And finally, he sends his heir. He sends his son. Obviously, that's him. They want to kill him. He knows they want to kill him. And by now, I think they know that he knows they want to kill him. Little cat and mouse. And he's told this parable about being the son, being the heir, which they don't like. And they're going to kill him.
Do they know and understand that Jesus is the Messiah, not just the prophet anymore?
If they knew that, they probably would have behaved differently. But it's always possible, Gene, I've said this before, and I'm convinced there are things that in there that made me believe that even if they thought he was the Messiah, they might have killed him anyway, because it threatens their power, it threatens their riches. Yes, John Paul.
Well, it also reinforces that where God turns people over to their reprobate mind.
He does.
So even if they knew he was Christ, they had already sealed themselves into rejection, and they weren't going to come out of that.
I try and steer clear of judging what someone does or doesn't believe, but I think it's fair to say that at least some of them fall into that. Yeah, statistically. So he tells this parable in front of the people, and they know it's about them, and that makes them angry. And it says they really, really want to arrest him, but if they, especially after this parable, if they come and take him, the people are going to rise up, and they can't have that. It says they're afraid of the people. So this is yet another one of these parables where he's putting them on edge. He's putting them at a point. When they find the right time, they're going to kill him.
And so this takes us to another parable and another teaching. And it is in response to a question that the religious leaders bring, or it's the answer to what the religious leaders are asking Jesus. And at this point, you have to remember the religious leaders thought they had the perfect trap for Jesus. So this happened after the tenant parable.
In the Gospels, it comes right on the heels of this other parable. They're gonna trap him. They've come up with the perfect thing that no matter what he answers, he's going to be in trouble.
And so I'm going to read this one from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. I'm sorry, chapter 20, starting at verse 19. And once again, this is called paying taxes to Caesar. And it is also in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Mark. So the same story appears in 3 of the Gospels. Verse 19. When the scribes and chief priests realized that Jesus had spoken this parable against them, They sought to arrest him that very hour, but they were afraid of the people. So Luke is agreeing with Matthew there. So they watched him closely and sent spies who pretended to be sincere. They were hoping to catch him in his words in order to hand him over to the rule and authority of the governor. Teacher, they inquired, we know that you speak and teach correctly. You show no partiality, but teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Is it lawful for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus saw through their duplicity and said to them, show me a denarius. Whose image and inscription are on it? Caesar, they answered. So Jesus told them, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. And they were unable to trap him in his words before the people. And amazed at his answers, they fell silent.
This is one of those stories that most of us have heard. You know, if you've gone to church much, you've heard this. And it's such a cute, clever thing, but we're left at the end of it going, what does that even mean? Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's and render unto God. Am I supposed to pay all my money, you know, to somebody? By the time I'm done, I have nothing and everything. We don't usually get told what's really going on here. This is one place where the first place I've ever really sort of had a disagreement with the way the Chosen handles something, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But the trap they're laying for him, the Jews resent Rome to no end. The Jews don't like being controlled. Well, neither do we, right? Nobody tells us what to do. And Rome demands heavy taxes. And they want a Messiah to kick Rome out. And this is a big thing. They're saying it's not even legal for us as God's people to pay taxes to Rome. They're always, you know, up in arms. And this is one of the ways they keep saying it ain't right that we're doing this. It's not even legal. And so they come to him and they say, Master, and you notice the flattery they start with, we know that you're that you say all things fairly. We know that it's like Shakespeare, and we all know that Caesar is a righteous or is an honest man. They start with the flattery in front of everybody, and they go, so we have a question for you. Is it legal for us to pay taxes to Caesar or not? And the trap is, if he says, yes, it is, the people are going to turn on him, because now this supposed Messiah has said that it's legal to pay taxes to Rome, and they don't want to pay taxes to Rome, and they're going to be mad. But if he says, no, it's not legal, they're going to go report him to Caesar straight away, right? Perfect trap. And notice what he says. He says, have any of you got a denarius on you? If somebody got a denarius, would you? And somebody reaches in their pocket and says, yeah, here, I've got one. I have in my mind this picture. The moment he does that, and the moment somebody says, here's a denarius, at least some of them in the crowd are going, oh no, oh no, oh no. He asks for a denarius. He doesn't just ask for a coin. He asks for a denarius. The denarius has the picture of Caesar on it. How embarrassing would it have been if he says, does anybody got a coin? And they pull out something and it doesn't have an image of Caesar. So he asks for a denarius. He knows what he's doing. Caesar has had these coins made with his picture. This is not commonplace. The most common coin before that of Rome had an elephant on it. He has these made, and they literally belong to Caesar. And he pays people in them. You're using his coinage. But see, that's not the real big deal. The Jews are prohibited by Jewish law from having graven images. And the idea behind that is things that these images become idols. So they're absolutely prohibited from making graven images, from possessing graven images. They're walking around with coins. See, the Jews had fights internally over probably hundreds of years about what their own coins would look like. They couldn't have pictures of people on them. They had fights over whether or not to include a sheaf of wheat on their coins. Is that a graven image? So they're all aware they're not supposed to be having these graven images. And he says, hey, have any of you good Jews got a denarius? And one of them says, oh yeah, sure, here. And he says, whose picture's on that? They're in trouble. They're not supposed to be walking around with this graven image of Caesar on it. But not only that, the fact that they have the Roman coin says they're doing business with Rome. They're in bed with Rome. They, for all purposes, are Rome. And he says, well, since you're doing that, give Caesar what belongs to him and give God what belongs to God. And you see now there's so much more to this little story than meets the eye. And they can't possibly argue with it, because the moment they start this conversation going, people are already going, hey, wait a minute. We never really thought about the fact that you guys are carrying around pictures of Julius Caesar. So they just have to let it drop. It is genius. And of course, he's God and man, so that explains it. But this is the story. Now, in The Chosen, he makes an issue out of it. And he basically, in The Chosen, kind of indicates that, yes, you should pay your taxes to Rome. I think he's setting that up to try and explain why later on, the people who said Hosanna and laid down palm fronds are going to come back later and say, crucify him. Let me lay that to rest for you real briefly. Jerusalem is divided into sections. There's a lower section. You go up, there's an Essene quarter. You go up, there's the rich Jews. And this is sort of downtown and uptown. And the poor people live downtown. And the higher you go, the richer you are. And all the way at the top is called the Praetorium. It's the fortress, and that's where Pilate is. Rome occupies the high ground. So by the time they get him up to Pilate's fortress, the poor people who were down below, who put down palm fronds and put down their cloaks and said, Hosanna, they're not up there. They're not the ones who say, crucify him. If there are any of them, is it possible there's some? I don't know, maybe. But that's not the point. The people who said Hosanna are not the people who say crucify. And for some reason, our teachers in this day love to say, and remember, the same people who said Hosanna later said crucify him, and they use it to prove some point of their own. It's not true. It's not true. Sorry, it's not true. And we'll get to that in a little more detail. I hope The Chosen doesn't do that. I have this ugly feeling he's going to. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
And to emphasize that in verse 26, when it says, after Jesus had said, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and God what is God's, in verse 26 it says, and they were unable to trap him. Who was trying to trap him? The religious leaders were unable to trap him in his words before the people. So at this point, when he is preaching this lesson, the people, those who put down the palms, they're out there too, but so are the religious leaders. They were unable to trap him in his words before the people, and amazed at his answers, they fell silent. Who fell silent? The religious leaders. Okay, that is.
And it's a setup for what comes next.
So we're going to go next week, or 2 weeks from now, we're going to go to the message Jesus left the apostles at the Last Supper, and then again at the resurrections. But we are going to go right now to, first of all, just a brief thing on Judas's betrayal in Exodus. Do you want me to, how do you want to set that up?
I don't know.
Oh, you wanted me to read Exodus 21, verse 32?
We'll make it real quick. We don't have to read the other part. You all know Judas betrayed him. And it's believed, and I think The Chosen does a beautiful job of this, in that Judas is referred to as Iscariot, we think anyway. We think that Judas thought Jesus is going to be the Messiah who comes in and conquers. And he begins to figure out, especially this last week, that's not happening, because Jesus is telling his disciples, I'm going to die. And all of a sudden, Judas says, hey, wait a minute, this isn't the guy. And so he goes to the Romans and says, hey, they want a way that they can take Jesus quietly We've been told over and over again, they want to take him, but they're afraid of the people. So they need a way to take him quietly without the people rising up. And Judas provides that. He says, I know where he's going to be Passover night, and I'll turn him in. And they pay him 30 pieces of silver. You've all heard 30 pieces of silver, right? Here's what you probably haven't been told. You want to read from Exodus?
Exodus chapter,
Exodus.
Exodus chapter 21, and I'm just going to read verse 32. If the ox gores a manservant or a maidservant, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the servant, and the ox must be stoned.
30 pieces of silver is the price of a slave. If you've got an ox and it gores and kills somebody else's slave, you got to pay the owner 30. That's what you pay for a slave. And they don't accidentally select 30 pieces of silver. This is an insult. This is their way of saying he's worth exactly as much as a slave. We're going to kill him and we'll recompense Judas, but we're going to pay a slave price for this man. That's what they think of him. And it says a whole lot about where their mind is. That's just a little aside, thought you might like to know it. But it's not an accident that they choose 30 pieces of silver.
So the next part, as we go into,
I'm pardon me, Mary.
Yes, no problem.
I'm not sure that logic would hold if Jesus had been preaching for 7 years, because then they'd have to let him free and provide for him.
If he's a slave, it's not saying that he is a slave. It is a gesture of contempt. They have absolute contempt for him.
We now want to go, we're going to skip forward to the trial and the trial from the Jewish side, and then what Pilate does. So there's this, it's a two-part thing. It's what the Jewish people, the Jewish leaders do, and then what Pilate has to do. So going on.
Let me just what we want you to understand, to be listening for, is how incredibly unfair. This is not really a real trial. They're just going to kill him. And what they do violates every Jewish law about a trial, all of it. And a lot of our law in this country, we talk about the Magna Carta and we talk about this. A lot of our legal system is based on the Jewish legal system. Indictments, witnesses, a lot of the procedures, it's based on the old Jewish system. A lot of people are not even aware of it, but it is. And they violate every law. The Passover is coming. They're going to kill him. A capital case, it's going to take at least 48 hours, at least 2 days to get this done. Keep that in mind now as Mary starts reading.
So we're going to look at the Jewish trial, if you will, from the Gospel of John, because it gives the most detail. So I'm going to take you to John chapter 18. And Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane. And when we take this up, and I'm in verse 12. Then the band of soldiers with its commander and officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. They brought him first to Annas, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who advised the Jews that it would be better if one man died for the people.
So they don't take him to a courtroom. They're not supposed to do anything about a trial at night. Their legal system is supposed to be handled in the daylight, transparently, so that everybody can see. It's baked into it. They come and get him at night, totally illegal. And they take him to the house, not the courtroom, of Annas. Annas used to be high priest. He did some stuff that ticked off the Romans, and Rome kicked him out of the job of high priest. He is no longer high priest.
And remember, the Romans are now appointing high priests.
And so what they do is Annas manages to get his son-in-law appointed high priest. But Annas is nobody. What the deal is Annas is still behaving like high priest, and his son-in-law is a puppet, all right? So they take him to a house, not the courtroom. They take him at night. They take him to Annas, who is literally nobody. But even if he was the high priest, this is not supposed to be happening privately with the high priest. It's supposed to be happening in the daylight in front of the Sanhedrin, all right? If you ever feel like you've been treated unfairly, if you ever feel like, you know, things go on and it's just not right what happens to me, it's not fair. I don't know of anything more unfair than what you're going to be hearing about in the next few minutes.
We're going to skip the part of Peter's first denial. Remember, Peter is outside of Annas's house and he denies Jesus. But I'm going to take it up again on verse 19 in chapter 18 of John. Meanwhile, the high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. I have spoken openly to the world, Jesus answered. I've always taught in the synagogues and at the temples where all the Jews came together. I said nothing in secret. Why are you asking me? Ask those who heard my message. Surely they know what I said. When Jesus had said this, one of the officers standing nearby slapped him in the face and said, "Is this how you answer the high priest?" Jesus replied, "If I said something wrong, testify as to what was wrong. But if I spoke correctly, why did you strike me?" Then Annas sent him, still bound, to Caiaphas, the high priest.
Whole bunch of stuff going on here that we don't ever get taught. First of all, it was not Roman soldiers that took him in the garden. That's always what you see in the paintings. It's the temple guards. The temple has their own soldiers. And so he's here in front of Annas, and Annas is questioning him to speak about himself. Now, in the Jewish legal system, the Sanhedrin, first of all, there has to be an indictment. Somebody has to bring charges, and they're written, and there has to be an indictment, right? There is none against Jesus. This is illegal. They bring witnesses. In the Jewish system, there must be two witnesses that say the same thing. If there's only one witness, there's an old story that says that two men go into a house, one of them comes out with blood all over him, and the other one lays inside dead. There aren't two witnesses. There can't be a conviction. I know that sounds strange, but their system is designed so that innocent people are not wrongly convicted. So is ours. Two witnesses. And in this case, there's no indictment. There are no witnesses. A defendant cannot testify against himself. Now, in our system, you can't be made to convict. You can't be made to speak. You have the right to remain silent. In their system, it's even more stringent. A defendant may not testify against himself. Period. End of story. So they're asking him to testify against himself. Okay? Every law is being broken. And he says, hey, look, everything I did was out in the open. Surely you have some witnesses. Why don't you ask them? See, he's reminding them of the law. And they know they're breaking the law. And he says, surely you must have witnesses that heard me say things. Why are you asking me? Go ask them. And a soldier hits him and says, is that how you talk to the high priest? Annas is not the high priest, remember? They're not allowed to strike a defendant. That's another law. I want you to imagine in our current legal system that some people drag a defendant to the house of the judge. They're
At night.
At night. The jury is composed of the arresting officers and some of his shift buddies. Okay, they don't allow. They compel the person to testify against himself. You don't have the right to remain silent. You'd be going, oh my gosh, there's a civil rights case here, isn't there? This is going to get overturned. This isn't going to get overturned. This thing is so messed up, there aren't even words for it. If it happened today, you'd just be pulling your hair out. And so they strike him. And imagine that your defendant in the court case is wearing an orange prison jumpsuit and is handcuffed. Gene's laughing because he's an attorney. You don't do that. It's prejudicial, isn't it? There's already an assumption. This person is a criminal. They did all of those things, and they're all illegal under Jewish law. They strike him, and it says at that point, they drag him now to the house of Caiaphas, who's the puppet high priest. They're not supposed to be going to somebody's house in the middle of the night, but that's what they do. Let's keep going.
And then we've got Peter's second and third denials. And then, so I'm on now, I'm going to skip ahead to verse 28 of chapter 18. Then they led Jesus away from Caiaphas into the praetorium.
Praetorium. Let's stop right there.
Yeah,
Go ahead. You want to talk about it?
Well, I was going to say the Gospel of John doesn't talk about going to Caiaphas' house. They said they went to Caiaphas' house, and after Caiaphas' house, then now they're finished. The Jewish leaders are finished. Now they're taking them to Pilate.
We dealt with this last week. The Gospels tell different pieces, and it's not, something that doesn't add up. It's just that they each have their own purpose. They each have their own mission, and they tell, but John has some connections in the Jewish hierarchy. But they go to Caiaphas. We're told about some things that happened at Caiaphas' place in other Gospels. It's really beside the point, because what we're trying to show you is how this sham trial went. So the beauty of John is they go to Caiaphas, they do a bunch more illegal stuff. They try and compel him to testify against himself. That's a horrific thing to do in Jewish law. They also, a defendant is supposed to have an attorney. If you can't afford one will be appointed to you. You don't show up on your own because you don't know the law. You're supposed to have someone who does. And you have the right. In fact, they are supposed to try and have other witnesses, rebuttal witnesses. What if you have other witnesses who say, you have two witnesses, but you have other witnesses who say, oh no, that's not what happened. They didn't tell you the whole story, right? Jesus doesn't get any other witnesses. And it says in the other Gospels that they were trying to get false testimony. The way this is supposed to work, if you have two witnesses, remember you got to have two, they bring them in separately. And they ask the first witness to tell his story. And then they send him out and they bring another one in to tell his story. And if the two stories don't add up, if there are discrepancies, they're supposed to kick the case right there. Okay? Beautiful system because we don't convict innocent people. Now, people can collude, and we know that, but at least they're testing to make sure that you have two witnesses that tell the same story. And then the defense gets to bring in their witnesses who go, no, this is what really happened. And the Sanhedrin is supposed to hear this and judge whose story is the most compelling, whose story adds up. And Jesus gets none of that. And after this sham that goes on in Caiaphas' house, they haul him down, or up, pardon me, thank you, Mary. They haul him up to Pilate. Remember, the higher you go in Jerusalem, the richer you are. And up at the top, there's Antonia Fortress, and there's what's called the Praetorium. The Praetorians are Pilate's personal guard. The Praetorian Guard is actually Caesar's guard. So they're there as representatives of Rome, but they're the handpicked guard. So the Praetorium is this inner sanctum of Rome, up at the top of the mountain in Jerusalem. They haul him up there. Why do they haul him to Pilate? Because they don't have the right to kill someone. Rome has said, you're no longer allowed because they've abused it. You're no longer allowed to execute. If you're going to kill somebody, you're going to go through us. Why? Because one of the two things Rome wants is peace and quiet. And they have executed people, and it caused big uprisings, and Rome has to pay for soldiers and put down the uprising. So no more of these executions. You can flog them, you can do all this stuff. You can't kill them. So they sooner or later have to take him to Pilate because they've got to have permission to kill him, and they've got to get it done now because tomorrow's preparation for Passover, and we got to have him dead because we can't soil ourselves at Passover. The truth is, you remember Bethphage, they call it Bethphage sometimes, this little town just outside? Capital stuff is supposed to be handled in Bethphage, especially for one of the elders of Israel, because they don't want to sully Jerusalem with killing someone. They're breaking every law. This should have taken 2 days. It should have been handled. But no. We're going to take him upstairs to Pilate, and we're going to either get Pilate to kill him or we're going to get permission to kill him ourselves. It was always the goal, and you see that in the way this happens. Take him upstairs to Pilate.
Remember, this happened, I'm just going to say days. Thursday evening was the Last Supper. We all know that that's a very long dinner. Then he goes out to the Mount of Olives. He's arrested there. And then this has happened all night long at Annas's and Caiaphas's house. So the next sentence says, by now it was early morning. So this is Friday early morning. It's been up all day. By now it was early morning, and the Jews did not enter the Praetorium to avoid being defiled and unable to eat the Passover.
Isn't it beautiful? If they go in, if the good Jews go into the Praetorium, this, Gentile stronghold, they will be ritually unclean and they won't be able to participate in Passover. So they said, we aren't going in. And Mary's about to read, Pilate is forced to come out to them. Can you imagine how happy that makes him? I've got to come out at dawn to deal with these dirty Jews, these dogs, because they won't come into my house. They're too good to come to my house. Pilate's not in a good mood, but he comes out because they're the leaders. He's got to keep the peace, and he goes through with it.
Verse 29, so Pilate went out to them and asked, what accusations are you bringing against this man? If he were not a criminal, they replied, we would not have handed him over to you.
Is that not just the most circular thing you've ever seen? He asked for, okay, what are the charges? What's so important that you would drag me out at dawn? What has he done that I need to get involved? And they said, if he wasn't a criminal, we wouldn't have brought him. And are you children? Does that sound like, is that the most certain? If you feel like you've been treated unfairly, look at this.
You take him and judge him by your own law, Pilate told them. We are not permitted to execute anyone, the Jews replied. This was to fulfill the word that Jesus had spoken to indicate the kind of death he was going to die.
So here we go. They don't tell him what the charges are. It says, you take him and try him by your own laws. I'm not getting involved in this. We have this idea, and I've mentioned before, that Rome just executes people at will. Pilate could just have someone crucified at will. No, he can't. Rome will judge him harshly if he does something dumb and causes an uprising. You can't just, and Roman leaders have gotten executed for doing this. Pilate will later be called back to Rome because he does something dumb like this. So he doesn't want any part of it. He says, you haven't given me any reason why Rome should be involved. You take him, you try him according to your laws, and they go, we're not permitted to execute. What does that tell you? This was always about, we're going to kill him, and we're going to kill him today, and the only way we can do it is through you. So here we are.
Verse 33, Pilate went back into the Praetorium, summoned Jesus, and asked him, are you the king of the Jews? Are you saying this on your own? Jesus asked, or did others tell you about me? Am I a Jew? Pilate replied. Your own people and chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is not of this realm. Then are you a king? Pilate said.
Then you are a king.
Then you are a king, Pilate said. You say that I am a king, Jesus answered. For this reason I was born and have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. What is truth? Pilate asked. And having said this, he went out again to the Jews and told them, I find no basis for a charge against him, but it is your custom that I release to you.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
stop there.
Okay.
So he brings him in. The Jews won't come in, but he takes Jesus back in. He goes, the word's gotten back to him. He knows what people are saying. There's a new king in town, a new king of the Jews. And so he says, so are you the king of the Jews? Is that what you're saying? And Jesus says, did you say this or did somebody tell you about me? In other words, I didn't say I'm the king of the Jews, did I? That's not what he's here for. Did you say it or did someone else? And Pilate's got to go, yeah, the truth is, I don't know that you say that. Somebody else told me that. He says, I came into the world for this purpose. First, he says, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, that automatically, Pilate has to relax because this is not some guy saying, I'm a king and I'm rising up against Rome. Because my kingdom is not of this world. But Pilate says, so you are a king? Is that what you're saying? And he says, no, that's not what I'm saying. By the way, he says, if my kingdom were of this world, my people would be rising up to keep me from being arrested, wouldn't they? This would be an uprising, which is what you're really worried about. And you don't see one, do you? And Pilate's got to understand that. You know, he's got no reason to be involved. But he says, I came to testify to the truth. And everyone who believes in or how's he exactly say it? I don't want to get this wrong.
For this reason, I was born and have come into the world to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice.
Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. And this now is one of my favorite little passages that describes what I see in politicians. Pilate's response is, he says, everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice. And Pilate's thinking, oh, geez, you're one of them. Truth. And okay, now I get who you are. You're one of those, you're a Boy Scout, right? You're one of those people who thinks nothing's right. And you're just, and he says, what is truth? Now, I have heard ministers and teachers and stuff act like what Pilate is saying is, what is this truth? Truth? I've never heard of that. Pilate knows what truth is. He says, what is truth? He's going, what's that to me? I'm a politician. I don't care about the truth. I don't deal in the truth. Truth is what I say it is. You want to claim the truth? It's yours. Fine. That's literally enough to tell Pilate there's no threat to Rome here. You're one of those Boy Scouts who's talking about right and wrong. That doesn't concern me. And he walks back out and he says, I see no reason to charge this man. I got nothing.
He's not leading an uprising against the Roman Empire.
The Jews aren't going to have it. So now we come to the next part.
Verse 39, but it is your custom, he's talking to the Jewish leadership, that I release to you one prisoner at Passover. So then, do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Not this man, they shouted, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was an insurrectionist.
Pilate's looking for a political way out. And he says, I know what I'll do. I'll give them a choice. I'll make them an offer they can't refuse, right? You remember that from The Godfather. I'm going to make them an offer they can't refuse. He says, I have a tradition. I'm such a nice guy. Every year at Passover, to do something for the little people, I release one of the prisoners. And I've got a guy here who led an insurrection and murdered people. And the Jews don't like insurrectionists, as you see with Jesus, because it threatens the peace and they know that's their job. So anyway, he goes, how about if I give you a choice between this guy, this king of the Jews, or Barabbas, who's an insurrectionist and a murderer? Shall I release, now can I release him? And they go, no, give us Barabbas, give us the bad guy. This surprises him because he thinks he's left them a choice where they have to say, even though we hate this guy, we don't want you releasing Barabbas. Now, this is the crucify him. In the other Gospels, it's told this is where they say, crucify him. Who's there? The Jewish leaders who did the mock trial all night and then marched him up the hill to the Praetorium. These are not the people down in the lower part of Jerusalem who laid out the palm fronds. Chances are they wouldn't be allowed to go up there. But you know, they didn't get up at dawn to accompany. Maybe there's a few of them, but that's not who says crucify him. The people who say crucify him are the religious leaders who brought him up for the purpose of having him killed. Put that to rest in your mind. Why did the people who said Hosanna turn around and say crucify him? They didn't. Put it to bed.
I think it's also telling that the statement is Barabbas, no question, is against the Roman Empire. He's an insurrectionist. So now you're caught. I mean, you got the evil itself against Rome, and you got a guy who says he's a Boy Scout. I have no problem with the Boy Scout. I do have a problem with Barabbas, and you're letting me go. You're making a fool out of me.
You're right, Gene. Pilate knows that this Jesus situation is a political powder keg. And he's willing to let go a known insurrectionist and murderer to try and not have it be Jesus. This is not because he believes in Jesus. It's because he's looking for a way of getting out of a political bind. They literally have put Pilate in a bind, and he's looking for a way out. So now they've said crucify him, and we move on.
Chapter 19. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns, set it on his head, and dressed him in a purple robe. And they went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and slapping him in the face. Once again, Pilate came out and said to the Jews, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man." So as soon as the chief priests and the officers saw him, they shouted, "Crucify him, crucify him." Note that it says chief priests and officers. "You take him and crucify him," Pilate replied, "for I find no basis for a charge against him." "We have a law," answered the Jews, "and according to that law, he must die because he declared himself to be the Son of God." When Jesus heard this statement, he was even more afraid.
Pilate heard this statement.
I'm sorry. When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid and went back into the praetorium. "Where are you from?"
Let's
he
pause
asked.
there. So he takes him in and has him flogged. Did that ever confuse you? He dressed him in purple. That's the color of a king. Crown of thorns on the head. Pilate's looking for a way out. And he knows these guys are mad because they say that he's claimed to be king of the Jews. So he mocks him. He dresses him up like a fake king, flogged him, and it was not a gentle flogging. I mean, this would be, and so what he says is, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have the guy beaten up. We're going to mock him like crazy. We're going to prove he's not really a king, and I'm going to hand him back. And they're going to say, "Okay, good enough. We've put this king of the Jews thing to rest, and Pilate will be done with it." And he takes him back out thinking, now I've got myself out, and they say crucify him. And I guess that's technically where they say it. Mary rightly pointed out that John actually says it was the chief priests and the officers who say crucify him. Now we get down to the final truth. The gospel, one of them actually says, it's not the common people, it's the Jewish leaders who say crucify him. They say crucify him, and they go, well, he says, well, then you take him and crucify him. He's going to pass the buck. This is a political hot potato. And they go, look, we got a law here. He has to die because he said,
He's the son. He must die because he declared himself to be the Son of God.
because he declares himself to be the Son of God. Now picture what Pilate hears. Pilate doesn't hear the Son of the God because they believe in lots of gods. But they're saying that this guy claims to be the son of a god. Romans believe in gods. And they have Hercules and they have whoever else, all of these offspring of gods, and they're mighty. And Pilate all of a sudden goes, oh, whoa, hold on just a minute. This guy claims to be the son of a god? that could be a different story. And he goes, hold on just a minute. And he goes back inside and he says to Jesus, who are you really? Listen.
Where are you from? He asked. But Jesus gave no answer. So Pilate said to him, do you refuse to speak to me? Do you not know that I have the authority to release you and authority to crucify you? Jesus replied, you would have no authority over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed me over to you is guilty of greater sin.
Let's stop right there.
We're past 10, by the way.
Okay, we'll make this.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews kept shouting, if you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is defying Caesar.
We'll make this real quick because Mary says it's at 10. Pilate has heard son of a God, and he goes back, he goes, who are you? And he doesn't reply. And he keeps trying to get him, and he says, don't you understand? I have the authority to let you free. I also have the authority to crucify you. Talk to me. Pilate wants to know what he's dealing with. And Jesus said, you wouldn't have any authority at all if it wasn't from above. What's Pilate hearing? Is this guy the son of a God? And what Jesus says is, you wouldn't have any authority at all if it didn't come up from up above. But he says, the people who handed me over are the ones I blame. Jesus literally gives Pilate a pass. Do you hear what's going on? I'm not going to blame you. It's the people who handed me over to you who I blame. Look at what's going on. Look at what Jesus has offered to him. He doesn't care about Rome. This isn't about fighting the Romans. So Pilate goes back out and he goes, look, and they're not willing to let it go. They're putting Pilate in a bind. They go, he's declared himself to be a king, and anybody who declares themselves to be a king is no friend of Rome. They're no friend of Caesar. And they're trying to put Pilate in a place where he's either got to, they're saying, if you don't have him killed, we're going to go straight to Caesar and say that you let a guy off who challenged Caesar's authority. They're forcing his hand. Read that last bit, if you would.
From then on, Pilate tried to release him, but the Jews kept shouting, if you release this man, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who declares himself a king is defying Caesar.
Read it next.
When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat on the judgment seat at a place called the Stone Pavement, which in Hebrew is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation for Passover, about the 6th hour. And Pilate said to the Jews, here is your king. At this, they shouted, away with him, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king? Pilate said. We have no king but Caesar, replied the chief priests.
I know I'm over time. Last point of the day, I promise. But Pilate realizes he's going to buy him. They said they're going to threaten him with being disloyal to Caesar. So he hauls him out. And he says, here's your king. And they say, no, crucify, And he says, and he makes another point again of saying, shall we crucify your king? Notice how Pilate forces the point of Jesus being their king. Yes? And he forces them to swear a loyalty oath. They yell out, we have no king but Caesar.
Imagine the Jewish leader saying this.
Can you just hear the thunder pealing? I mean, like something's been carved in stone. They're supposed to be saying, we have no king but Yahweh. And they say, we have no king but Caesar. And he goes, fine, I'm going to remind you of that. You've just sworn, and you see what he's done with them. You want to put me in a bind? You've just declared openly, you have no king but Caesar, and it's going to come back to haunt you. I'm going to hold that over your head politically. This whole thing is a political ploy. This is not what a lot of us got told growing up, that maybe Pilate thinks Jesus is really who he said. No, he doesn't. They're playing politics. And the Jews swore away their allegiance to God for the sake of having this man killed.
And I'm gonna read just one final verse. Pilate also had a notice posted on the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. He wanted to remind everybody, you did this. You said he was King of the Jews.
He put it up in multiple languages so that everybody knows what it says, and the Jews get really upset. They go, take that off of there. Instead, put up a sign that says he claimed to be King of the Jews, and Pilate says, I said what I said. This is your king, and I'm killing him, or you're killing him. So there's your trial. If like I said, the point is, if you ever feel like you've been treated unfairly by the system, you know, the man got you down, this is the most amazing thing you'll ever read. It's just horrific. God, we come before you, and in our own way, in our own times, we're guilty of a lot of the same things. We are who we are. We're human. We abandon you at times when we have the ability to stand up. We shy away. We give our allegiance to countries and people and things instead of standing up. We have no right to look at these people and be upset at how terrible they were. Remind us. Let us look at this right now in this season and realize that a good man is given over to death, but also remind us that he gave himself, that no matter what, they weren't as powerful as they believed. He gave himself. And in the same moment that we see ourselves in this, remind us to see the gift, the forgiveness, the atonement that you gave for these things that we do. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, sorry for going over time a little bit, but not too bad. 9
Not too
minutes.
bad. I always do that bad, don't I? Good to see all of you. If any of you do have, if you want to come for Easter, let us know. We'll work out details.
Thanks, and see you in 2 weeks otherwise. Have a great one.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
That was awesome. That was so awesome. Woo! Thank you.
Earthly standards.